Well, we'll kind of get started. We have a lot to do here today, talking about OASIS. And real quick, I'm going to introduce our panel of experts. I'm Dave Lowe. I'm the CEO of isiFederal, and I'm not going to do a whole lot of talking about me. Most folks out there know about me doing business development components. We'll talk a little bit about that later. But we have with us Pat Suarez and Jamie Zell of GSAproposal.com. Say hello, Pat.
Hello, Pat.
and Jamie's here too. They're experts in GSA proposal development and understanding how the GSA likes to see things and responses. And Carl Dixon of CapturePlanning.com is here as well. Say hey, Carl.
Hello, everybody.
And what I love most about Carl, he has a whole bunch of stuff about capture management, the whole capture process, dealing with internal operations of helping your companies going through the proposal development process, what to look for, whether to bid, no bid, developing a strategy around that. I love that because I don't like to handle a lot of those things. I like to find the things and then hand it off to people who really know how to respond to proposals effectively. And Carl is one of those folks. So between us, we're gonna kind of gel all the way around this OASIS process, and with this, I'm going to hand it over to Carl, who's going to run with the rest of this presentation, and we'll bounce back and forth potentially later on. But I think that for the most part, Carl is going to be the one to drive this through, and I really appreciate everybody joining us. It's great to have you folks here, and as Carl takes over the reins, so he can see. You can see what's going on. So, Carl, take this away.
Okay.
Oh, before you do that, I will say a couple things. We did ask about what you folks are looking to do and what you would like to accomplish, and some of the, and I did this within the preference of the questions, and some of you fill this out. Was you provided specifics on how it'll be evaluated. And whether or not you should be positioned as a prime or a sub to a prime. You can get opportunities to bid. These are all components that we'll talk about in various ways. GSA OASIS activities, if it actually provided me value, learning something I didn't already know, so hopefully we do that for you, Scott. And really I knew exactly what we had to do to get OASIS, and that was from Chris Keller from Integrated, and hopefully we can do that and be able to provide you with those types of answers. And with that, I'm going to let Carl take it away, but we will be concentrating on your questions throughout. You can put in chat and questions on the right-hand side, and we'll do our best to assemble those and address those in due course through the presentation. Take it away, Carl.
Okay, so we're going to be talking about OASIS. We'll start off by talking about just exactly what is OASIS. We have a sense of urgency because the RFI, or the draft RFP, is out, and it has a draft RFP with it. It's actually 2 draft RFPs. So we really need to get serious about who can bid this thing, because OASIS is not for everybody. And we're going to talk through that. We'll also talk about, for those who do decide to move forward with it, what exactly is it going to take to win OASIS? And equally importantly, what are you going to need to do to make money from OASIS? So if you've already heard about OASIS, then you already know that it's big. But in fact, it's so darn big that it really doesn't even matter how big it is. Okay, you know, once you get beyond so many billion, it doesn't matter, because it's an IDIQ, an indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity contract, which means that when you win OASIS, you get nothing. Actually, I think you get $100. That's the minimum that every winner will get. But until you bid on task orders and win task orders, you don't actually get any money from the vehicle. So OASIS is an IDIQ, and that's a special kind of pursuit. As far as the status of OASIS, I mentioned that the RFI and the draft RFPs are out. One is specifically for small business, and the other one is for large businesses or unrestricted. In addition to that, GSA is planning an industry day, planning it for May 13th, but I don't think the formal announcement has come out yet. And when they do it, they are planning to have one-on-one sessions. So that's something that you want to prepare for, in addition to preparing for the proposal itself. So this is what they're buying on OASIS, okay? It's a huge IDIQ for purchasing these kinds of things. The core discipline, the vertical columns, okay, those are very key to the RFP and what you need to do to respond to it. And they really define the kinds of integration services that they want to use OASIS for. So it's program management, management consulting, scientific, engineering, logistics, and financial. But here's the thing. They don't want specialists. They don't want companies that only do one of these things. They want companies that can do most or all of these things. Okay, OASIS is for contracts that cover a lot of ground in a lot of different areas. So in addition to the core disciplines, you've got the life cycle phases on the left, the horizontal lines, okay, and you can see that it covers the full life cycle of projects. So with OASIS, they're looking for companies that can cover multiple core disciplines across the entire life cycle, and they'll be pitching OASIS, okay, to all the different areas, essentially the entire federal government, civilian and DOD, and all the different areas within both of those. They're even going, they even have a category for ancillary support services and products, which is basically everything else. So while the core disciplines are these areas, what they're actually going to be running through the OASIS contract vehicle will be everything they possibly can. All the different services and all the different areas. Go ahead, Dave.
I was just going to say that I see this as being a contract that will experience creeping and absorbing additional services. Some of the NAICS codes that you can find in the documentation already is really, it's already starting to include some of those as some of those support services potentially. So just pay attention to what's there, and this will, right now it's more IT kind of sort of solutions based, but there's all kind of components in there for environmental and all and advertising and things like that. So there's plenty of room for growth and plenty of areas for this to be an enormous opportunity for folks who win.
All right. So it's big and it covers a lot of ground, but what do we need to focus on right now? Okay, right now the key issue is eligibility. Are you qualified to bid OASIS? Because not everybody is. OASIS is designed to eliminate as many companies as possible. Okay, within the 6 core disciplines, they're going to have 40 awards. Okay, or I should say, in each of the different pools they set up, they'll have 40 awards, making the total of 240 awards, which means they're probably expecting 500 to 1,000 proposals. They do not want to evaluate 1,000 proposals. Okay, so as they want to be able to eliminate as many of them as possible, and so they've really structured the evaluation like an assembly line so that as things come in, if they're not compliant, they're tossed out immediately. Another thing that they've done to make it easier for them, okay, is that they are only looking at the information from the prime contractor. Normally, when you approach something like this, you would say, okay, well, to increase my capabilities, I'm going to bid as a team. And if there are gaps and things that I can't cover, I'll just find a subcontractor that can do that. And that's not going to work here. They're not looking for submissions by teams. In fact, they specifically exclude it. They're only looking at the capabilities of the prime. So the companies that bid OASIS have to be able to cover all of those service areas with projects that are big enough and do it all by themselves. They also have to cover all the other requirements. They range from having a DCAA-approved accounting system, okay, to the items that are on a 3-page checklist. Okay, and the first thing they do when they get that, when they get an OASIS proposal, is they're going to run down that checklist. They give it to you right there in the RFP, so there's no excuses. And they'll run down that checklist and see if you've dotted every I and crossed every T. And if not, they throw you out. So you will have to have supporting documentation for all of those items. This isn't the kind of proposal where you're going to do a whole lot of writing and you can explain your way around problems. This is one where you've got to have you not only have to meet the requirement, you have to provide the supporting documentation. So what if you don't qualify? Well, normally, if you couldn't be the prime on an opportunity, you look to go in as a subcontractor, but that's not an option here, okay, because they're not looking for teams, so you can't join a team in order to bid. But what you can do is wait until award, and then the prime contractors can add subcontractors. Now, you better believe that if you're a prime contractor that wins OASIS, you know, the very next day your phone's going to be ringing off the hook with people who want to be your subcontractor. And if you're the prime contractor, the way you're going to decide on who you want to have as your subcontractor is going to be whoever can bring you the most business. So if you want to get on a team after award, you really need to have in place your customer relationships and be developing the opportunities that you would like to be able to bring to the OASIS contract vehicle, and that's your ticket for getting on a team after award. So let's look at small businesses and what small businesses need to do to be able to bid OASIS. And let me, I guess Dave already introduced Pat Suarez of GSA Proposal, so I'm just going to hand it over to him now. Are you ready, Pat?
You bet.
Okay. Why don't you take it on?
Okay. Well, let's talk about the pools and size standards and all of this. The reason OASIS exists, it fills a need that GSA has had for a very long time in its schedule system. And you're probably wondering why. How come I have to have more than one core discipline here? Why can't I have just one? The reason why you have to have more than one is the reason behind OASIS. In fact, for ages, if you, say, tried to get a MOBIS contract, program management, and your past performance mingled some of the other disciplines that you saw, engineering or finance, the people, excuse me, up in Seattle wouldn't give you a contract because they would say, oh, it's not MOBIS, it's PES, or it's FABS, or it's something else. It's another schedule. This takes care of that hassle. And so instead of isolating past performances and being able to qualify to get a specific schedule, this actually is all about commingling those different pools, those different professional disciplines. So, you know, you can't compete in more than one. Yeah, you really should compete in more than one. The size standards, if we could see that next slide, Carl. Yep, there it is, thanks. Okay, you'll notice in the different pools, you've got size standards based on either how much money you've made or how many people work for you. So if you want to do engineering, which is that 541330, and you've made too much money, like you've made $27 million, then you have to move to pool 3, and you'll notice it says 54133 on. Then the exception is, okay, for specifically engineering, for this exception, you can get in. So you'll see that. You don't want to exceed those size standards, and that's why this particular solicitation is, in fact, aimed at small businesses. So can we pop back up to the other previous one? And there it is. Great. You'll notice the third bullet point has 2 sub-bullet points. You have to be able to show them that you've had a relatively significant amount of business. And just kind of going from memory, I know that in your experience write-ups, you have to show $2 million worth of business in the experience examples you give to GSA for OASIS. So basically this thing is all about, we want you to have some pretty significant past performance in the government space as well as the commercial space, and that's another difference between OASIS and a MOBIS schedule. MOBIS schedule, if you've got commercial past performance, that's great, that's what they're looking for. Here, they want people in here who have government past performance experience too. So this thing is kind of an outgrowth and a rethinking of the standard GSA schedule system. Go ahead, Carl.
Let me talk about real quick some of those size standards that you're talking about, Pat. First, in the different pools, you can see the kind of dollar volume that's already being generated in the federal space. Now, in addition to this, there's a couple of other pages that I'm going to supply this. If you email me, and you'll get an email address a little bit later, but we'll give a little bit breakdown of all the different NAICS codes and the potential within each one of those NAICS codes. But if you take a look at the summary, you're talking about $90 billion annually that this contract is looking to impact. In addition to other schedules that are out there and working in that space, GSA does about $40 billion through GSA schedules. So they're looking at this as a potential for being able to enhance their offerings through GSA. And each one of the pools is identified here. And just email me and I'll make sure you get that.
All right. So we talked about what OASIS is, the core disciplines, and the pools and size standards. Let's take a look at what's involved in preparing a proposal against the draft RFP that we have. Pat, you want to take it again?
You betcha. Okay, so format is as important as content. I can't emphasize this enough. 4 years ago, GSA had a solicitation out to bring in more companies to its STARS 8A program. And the way they structured that solicitation gave them a nightmare of proposals. And it took them more than a year to go through everything and make awards. I mean, it was just a real mess. This time, they've done it differently. They've got a specific format, it's streamlined, and it's designed to basically go through and say in, out, out, in, out, in, out. They are going to not duplicate that mess they had before. So if you stray from the format, that isn't good. The slightest little thing outside the format is going to hurt you, and it might not seem like much of a big deal to you, but it will be enough for your proposal to get tossed. So the proposal itself is in 6 volumes, and the solicitation provides the containers, if you will, for the information. But there are some, I mean, I'll just run through a couple of things here. For example, your background, which pool you want to propose to, a checklist, your compensation plan for your white-collar workers, including your policy for uncompensated overtime, your GSA Form 527, which I will address shortly, your experience template, and your past performance rating. You might think, what's the difference between experience and past performance? Well, again, it's all in the intent here. Your experience template is what have you done, how much was it worth. The past performance rating form is all about customer satisfaction surveys and so on. And then there are other accounting certifications, your accounting system, your proposal system. All of these matter, and how you present them matters. Now, I'll give you an example of something small that can get you tossed. They want to see your financials, and so they provide something called a GSA Form 527, which is about 7 or so pages long. And there's a checkbox on that, checkbox item 23. You check it, and you say, okay, I'm not going to put my financial information here. I'm going to attach it because item 23 lets me do it. Don't do it. Put your financial information in the form. And some people say, well, that's a hassle. You know, if I check 23, I can just, generate my P&L and my balance sheet from QuickBooks, but that's not how this works. So you will put your financial information into GSA Form 527. Something as mundane as that can run you into.
Pat, real quick, is that something that can get you booted before you can even get to the place of being graded then?
Potentially. It depends. Yeah. Let's see what happens with the final version of this document. But, for the 527, I always tell people, look, please just put the information in the 527. So small things matter, but that's why we exist, to make sure that you don't trip up like that. So anyway, make sure, one thing we talk about these NAICS codes, make sure that you have registered at SAM, the Systems for Award Management, sam.gov, and make sure you put as many NAICS codes in there as you have experience. If you really have verifiable experience in financial stuff or program management or engineering or any of that, make sure your SAM is updated.
It's that, I can't stress that enough. I've seen that happen multiple times where companies have gotten to the final stages where actually in the #1 slot, and the agency went to SAM to verify that their information was there. Their NAICS codes weren't in, and they were thrown out. It's really easy to do. It only takes a few minutes. It's free. You can go to your registration. If you understand SAM, that's a whole other story. I won't even talk about that thing. But what SAM is in the replacement of your CCR record, essentially, and going in and updating that doesn't take a whole lot of effort, and it can really harm you if you don't do it. So I just wanted to put a plug in for that for Pat.
Yep, thank you. Okay, and the next slide.
All right.
Yeah.
So next up is the RFI. Okay, because now that that's out, that's where our sense of urgency is coming from. So we need to talk about, what to do about the RFI. I'm going to take it, Pat.
Okay. This is all about GSA wanting comments about the information that is in this document. And they want the comments by April 29th. Now, they are inviting comments, they are inviting suggestions, they are inviting criticisms, they are inviting changes, but for the most part, what you see there in this solicitation is pretty much the final version. There may be tweaks, there may be some NAICS changes, who knows, but those disciplines that Carl showed you, the vertical and the horizontal, those are very important, and those I'm pretty sure won't change. So You don't have to submit comments, but if you do have questions or comments or suggestions about this document, there is a form in the solicitation, and there's an email address where you send that, and you have to do it by the 29th of April. And again, don't stray from any formats once you start doing the proposal. If you want to do this, if you want to participate with OASIS, I'd start now. And Dave and Carl will emphasize that again later, but waiting isn't good. Go ahead, Carl.
Yeah, go ahead, Carl. Talk about that for a minute. Right now, you're working on responses to these as if it was an RFP today, right? You're working on this.
Oh, absolutely. The draft is out. It tells you, what you're going to need to do in the proposal. And since we're not expecting it to change significantly, the best way to put us in the position to be able to win the proposal is to start now.
Yeah, and this has been out this has been in process for many years. This is the culmination of a whole lot of work. So they're not going to just put this out there and say, oh, well, we really meant to write it this other way. It's not going to change principally, we don't believe. And I think it's at the 90-95% range. And if you take the time now to go ahead and formulate your response, you can check it, recheck it, recheck it, right? So that you get to a place where you're very comfortable with your submissions and that all your I's are dotted and your T's are crossed.
Yeah, and actually, in a funny kind of way, one of the best things you can do to help you make comments on the RFI is to do the proposal.
Imagine that.
Yeah. Yeah, this is the template that they want the comments for the RFI in. So they're not looking for you to take their draft RFP and then write them a long letter or a 20-page response telling them what's wrong with the draft. They want their comments in this cell, and they want to know which RFP section number that comment goes with. So you put all of your comments in this template, in this format, okay, or else they're not going to pay any attention to it.
That's right. And real quick, everybody, if you have your own questions right now for us, there's a questions panel on the right-hand side. I see, Andrew, you got your hand raised, and I want to get to you, but I'll absolutely do that. I don't want to ignore anybody that's out there. But if you have a question, we have several that we're collecting right now. Put your questions in on the right-hand side of your panel, and then we'll get to those as appropriate.
Now, as far as those RFI comments themselves go, okay, what you're going to put into that template, all right, they have some suggestions regarding places where they'd like feedback, but there's also some areas that you might want to focus on. But one of the things you need to do is first decide what you want to say or not say, because responding to the RFI is a great way to get in front of the customer. All right, you have an opportunity to show the customer that you are smart and helpful.
And so, let me throw something in there, Carl. I just read a question from Hassan who asked, "Does providing comments raise your profile with them?" And the answer is yes, because now they know that you have interest. And you're asking a question specific. And sometimes, in these question and answer sessions, these people aren't all knowing and all seeing. The objective is to say, hey, what did we miss? What's the gap here that we need to fill? So absolutely, and I know you, Carl, and I are on the thought of it's always good to respond, but you go on with what you were saying about what you might want to say or not say about that.
First off, okay, they've got these pools and these size standards, okay. You want to look at those, and you want to find where there are problems for you. What things might keep you from being able to bid. And you might want them to make changes. Okay, this is a draft RFP. So, this is your opportunity to request that they make changes that will help you be able to bid. But if you take a look at something in that draft RFP and you just say, you know, hey, I don't like that, that's not fair, or something like that, you know, that doesn't give them a whole lot to act on. But if instead you see something and you say, hey, how about I show this instead of what you asked for? Would that be acceptable? Setting things up as substitutions, okay, is a really good way of giving them a means to change an RFP requirement. And so, you know, look over the RFP, the requirements, and the scoring system, and if there's something in there that you can't meet, but you can think of an alternate, now is your opportunity to pitch them on that alternate, because if you wait until the final RFP, you won't be able to change it, and they'll ignore what you submit if it doesn't meet the requirements.
Or worse, they won't even respond to any questions you might have. They'll just ignore you.
Yeah. So look at all those NAICS codes, look at the thresholds and the size standards, okay, see where you might have problems or issues. Go over Section L, the instructions in detail, and this is where responding to the proposal might be the best way to prepare for the draft RFP. Because by doing a dry run on the proposal, you'll see where your problems are. And one of the things that they're looking for feedback on is whether they've created instructions that are wrong or too difficult. So if you try to follow the Section L instructions and run into a problem, now you can submit it as a comment and get it changed. But if you wait until the final RFP, it'll probably be too late. You want to do the same thing with the evaluation criteria, which in this RFP is essentially a scoring system. Okay, you really want to scrutinize that. Right? And the last area where they want feedback is if there's anything that would cause a problem that would keep people from bringing an opportunity to OASIS as a contract vehicle. So, you know, if you are in the future talking to a potential customer and you have a lead on something that they need done and they want to do a procurement, okay, and it's something that's cross-functional and sounds like it's suitable for OASIS, okay, is there anything that would keep you from taking it to OASIS or might cause you to take it to a different contract vehicle instead? They want to know about that now so that they can make OASIS, you know, an attractive contract vehicle to use. So go through Section L, the scoring system, and everything else. Formulate your comments and then put your comments in their format in order to get in front of them and demonstrate that you are both smart and helpful. And along the way, do your draft proposal so that you're in position for when the final RFP comes out. So let's talk about that. The final RFP comes out, and now, you know, the whole emphasis shifts to winning OASIS. What is it that you need to do now in order to be in position to win? And the news that I have for you is that you've probably already won or lost. Okay, when you look at that RFP, okay, and you look at the scoring system, what you're going to see is they ask for proof of things that you have. They don't ask for you to explain it. They don't ask for you to write your approaches. You can't write around it or escape it. Whereas in a typical RFP, they might ask for what your quality assurance methodology is. Here, what they do is that they don't ask that question at all. Instead, they say, send me a copy of your ISO 9000 certification. And you've either got it or you don't. And if you're not ISO certified now, you're probably not going to be by the time OASIS is awarded. So there's nothing that you can do to overcome that. Now, ISO is just one of the items on the scoring sheet. It's not even one of the biggest ones, all right? But collectively that scoring sheet adds up to a whole bunch of line items that are just like it. And so you can find out whether you are a likely winner or loser of OASIS right now by going through that scoring table. Right? You can point score yourself. And keep in mind, when you do the proposal, it's an assembly line. Okay, like Pat said, they're going to go through and check off. You provided this, you didn't provide that. You provided this, you didn't provide that. And then they're going to add up the score, and that's it. Okay, no thinking to it. It's an assembly line process.
Now, just real quick, Carl, if you've already done this scoring thing and you've looked at it, don't jump off a bridge, because there's still opportunity, even within this, to position yourself for work with OASIS and through Prime. So don't jump off of bridges. There's a question coming up a little bit later, and I think we'll address it pretty clearly about how to address a prime positioning. But I just want to throw that out there, because there's a couple people that are asking that question about, well, should I even care if I can't come close?
Yeah. There are a couple of things you can do right now, okay, to help. The first one is to verify and update your certifications. Okay, make sure nothing is expired, but also make sure that you can put your hand on the certificates or the proof or the documentation that you need. Like I said a minute ago, go ahead and prepare a draft proposal, and because that's going to help you. You know, when the final RFP comes out, since they're not asking you to do a lot of writing, there's a real good chance that they're not going to give you 40 or 60 days to respond. This could be a 30-day or less response. And so if you have your draft proposal, then you're just looking at what if anything changed in the final RFP, and you're ready to go. That's the position that you want to be in. Okay. The other thing you can do now to win OASIS is make sure you attend the industry day, and definitely schedule a one-on-one session. Keep in mind, if they're going to get 500 to 1,000 proposals off of OASIS, okay, you don't want to be the last one to ask for a one-on-one session. I don't know if they're going to have a cap on them or not. They're probably going to have to. So as soon as that announcement comes out, make sure that you get your one-on-one schedules. I mentioned the scoring system a minute ago. Here it is. Okay, this is what it looks like. This isn't the whole thing. It's actually a couple pages long. But it's line after line of things that you need to have, and if you have it, you know, the amount of points that you get for it. To best understand the scoring system, okay, if you look through it, you'll find that some things are given more weight than others. And one of the things that leapt out at me is that if you have an average of 5 for your past performance evaluation scores, okay, that doubles your score over the folks who got 4s. Okay, and a 4 is a pretty good rating, right? But 5 double your score. Another key one is that you want to have, you know, a lot of experience. Even in the small business categories where the number might be lower than 50 million, it's still pretty high. Okay, OASIS favors the largest companies in each of those pools. For example, you know, and there's a difference between the minimum required to bid and what it's going to take to win. Okay, they're making 40 awards in each of the pools. So you have to have the highest point score, or you have to have one of the 40th highest point scores out of everybody else in that pool. So the minimum might be that you need 3 projects to be able to qualify for OASIS. But the truth is that if you don't cover at least, you know, 5, okay, you're at a disadvantage. Okay, you need to be one of the top 40. Okay, and if you look at the point scoring system, if you cover all 6, it doubles your score, just like getting a 5 on your past performance. So companies that cover all 6 disciplines and have 5s on their past performance have a huge advantage on OASIS. And I bet you in each of the different pools and on both of the RFPs that the companies that are in the top 5, those are going to be the ones that covered all 6 areas and had 5s on their past performance. In addition to that, they have that ancillary support category, and then there are other attributes like having multiple locations. Those can add to your score as well, and so those become a competitive advantage. Okay, if you have multiple locations, or if you also do the ancillary support, you'll get a higher score than somebody that doesn't. And a big one that jumped out at me was you get 500 points just for having an approved purchasing system. That's in addition to your accounting system. You have to have a DCAA accounting system, but here they're talking about the purchasing system. And 500 points is a lot in their scoring system. And then some other advantages are things like CMMI certification. I mentioned ISO earlier. That's one of the smaller ones. Another advantage is having a secret or top secret cleared facility. So, you know, when the question comes down to what is it going to take to win OASIS, what it'll take is having one of the top 40 high scores in your pool, and getting to the highest score will depend on things like you see here. I can't tell you in each pool what score you'll need to win, but I can tell you that past performance, having 5s and covering more of the disciplines are major advantages. And you know, if you do have anything, you know, if you do have any gaps, like you don't have an ISO certification, that may not kill you, but you better have a plus somewhere else to make up for it.
And things like CMMI, if you're not familiar with that, that's like ISO on steroids. So you can't just develop that. That's another piece like ISO that you cannot facilitate between now and the time of award, where conversely, if you get an approved purchasing system in place, that may be something that you could do in a shorter order as opposed to something that, like a certification like that. So these are the types of things that each individual company has to look at and say, well, where are my strengths, where are my weaknesses, how can I best position this? And I think this is a beautiful thing. Do you have a list of that scoring system, Carl?
It's straight out of the RFP, section L53, L54. Actually, I'm sorry, this is out of the evaluation criteria, section M. They're pointing you back to section L. So winning OASIS is a matter of scoring the highest. Let's talk a little bit about developing business under OASIS, because that's a whole different thing. It's an IDIQ vehicle, so you have to bring task orders to OASIS in order to get money out of it. If you're the kind of company that does business by waiting for the announcements to show up on FedBizOps and then bidding them, OASIS probably is not for you. All right, because you're not going to.
I'll expand that one. The federal government's not for you if you're just doing that. If that's your approach to the marketplace. But I'll get into that in a minute. Sorry, Carl.
That's fine. So I mean, if you're bidding OASIS, you better be the kind of contractor that can identify targets, go to your targets, establish relationships, and out of those relationships, surface ideas and things that the customer wants to procure, and then bring them to a contract vehicle to make it happen. That's what you need to do with OASIS, and from there, I'll hand it over to Dave because he's the real expert in this area.
Well, I appreciate that, Carl. A lot of great information, and I appreciate some of the questions. We're going to be looking at some of those questions. Some of these will be answered as we go along through this portion of it. Like many vehicles that are out there that GSA has, the multiple award schedules, IDIQs, any of these things, BPAs even, don't necessarily mean business in the government, right? So what we were just talking about is you may. Did I lose everybody?
Yeah, you did. So
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was doing a really poor job of trying to fill in for you, so I'm glad you're back.
I have no idea what the heck happened there. I must have lost my network connection, but apparently it's back. So what did you guys hear about what I said? Because it was really brilliant. I'm not sure I'm going to remember it again. Anyhow, getting a market assessment about how it applies to your company specifically, gaining traction in the federal space. And what you're going to do the same thing whether you win or lose OASIS, irrespective of whether, you may not be the top 40, but you're going to be doing the same job to be able to go out, find the federal customers that have a particular need that you can fill, and then you have the ability to be able to control that, whether it goes through OASIS or not. So you'll find that that'll be the case. You can go to the next slide, Carl. Once OASIS is awarded, there will be task orders that come, and these are going to be quick pop task orders. Boom, boom, boom. And I mean the turnaround is going to be quick. So you're going to need to be able to turn these things around, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But in order to get yourself positioned to win a task order, first you have to understand the market, and the best way to do that is say, okay, how does the federal market apply to my company? If you're doing engineering services, who is responsible for buying those services now? How are they buying it? Do they prefer to develop a blanket purchase agreement? Do they prefer to run it through a GSA schedule? Do they have another scheduling mechanism? Do they have their own type of buying pattern? And more importantly, for me anyway, is knowing who they're buying from, because if we can do that, then we can usually figure out on the flip side of that is who is buying from your competitor, so that we can then target them specifically. And oftentimes, because we know who the competitor is, we can either formulate our positioning and our strategy around going after that specific competitor, that you may have a key differentiator that you have an advantage over. And the same thing applies here. So you find the key people that are responsible for taking the orders today, right now. They're doing the business today. We just saw it's $90 billion in these markets for across these pools right now. They're buying these services right now. So you can plan your pursuit around the people that are doing it today. If you do that, then you can start to do your introductions now. And by the way, September is happening this year, and there's going to be a spike again, as there is at the end of every fiscal year, as there will be additional funds that are going to be discovered last minute. Oh my gosh, I got to spend $50 million. I was just sitting with somebody last week with an agency. He's an agency head. He said, I had $50 million that popped on my desk the last week of September. Did he spend it? You better believe he did, because if he didn't spend it, he's going to lose it for this year and next year. And the same thing's going to happen. And we're operating in sequestration right now, and there's been a whole lot of nervousness and holding back of spending. Right now we're at 6 months of really not a whole lot of spending. Some continual spending for licensing agreements, projects that are already dedicated, and money that's already been dedicated for operational components and things like that. But we all know that there's been a pretty good lull. Well, if that's the case, they haven't been spending for 6 months. In the next 6 months, what do you think is going to happen? They're going to have to, even if they get cut 10%, they're going to be cranking out some work. So getting in position for this September is beneficial right now. And it's also beneficial as we move through the OASIS process, so that once OASIS is awarded and you're an awardee, then you can educate the people that you already have relationships with, as well as reach out to other people and educate them on the OASIS process and why OASIS is the greatest thing since sliced bread when it comes to making procurement easy for you. So if there's anything that you take out of this, know that your procurement people that are utilizing OASIS for a buy, their main interest is moving something off their desk. It's not how great you are at what you do. It's the vehicle itself. How can this vehicle help me not have to work as hard and make it easier for me to be able to procure what it is that the folks on the program side need? Very simple. That's what OASIS does for you. It gives you the ability to do that. Same with a GSA schedule, potentially. But not everything is running through GSA schedules. If you go to the Army, you have Army Chess. That they go to Army Chess first, they go to NASA Soup second, and then they go to GSA Schedule 73rd for anything in IT. So if you're pitching your GSA schedule, you're already third in line. But if you have a relationship and you can take that to somebody who's a Chess Prime, then you're in a position to be able to help. And the same thing is going to apply here. The bottom line is people buy from people they like. They can't possibly like you if they don't know you. And they can't possibly know you if you don't know who they are and you haven't reached out and started that introductory process, so that you can drive the opportunity as a prime or a sub. You wind up winning OASIS, great. You have a relationship that you can bring to OASIS. You educate them on OASIS and working together through being able to purchase that way. and still having to define, because just because you're on OASIS doesn't mean the competition stops. It means you're in a select pool of people that can bid. That's what that means. You're still competing between the rest of those 40 for that particular task order. So how are you going to be able to carve that out if you don't have a relationship with the person? The people that have relationships have a definite advantage, and I say relationships trump the check boxes or anything else. If they want to buy from you, they'll figure out a vehicle to do it. If you happen to have OASIS in your back pocket, and you have a Schedule 70, and you have a MOVIS, you have all these different, maybe an 8A, maybe you're service disabled, maybe you have some other certification that will be beneficial to them, so that they can minimize that, so that they can minimize the amount of people they have. Guess what? They don't want 40 respondents any more than you want 40 competitors. So they still want to be able to lessen that pool because it decreases the work. But the reason why these types of IDIQs are gaining traction, and we see this over and over and over again now in the marketplace, where these large IDIQs are gaining traction, is because they get to be able to meet their small business requirements with picking from this group of people. And as a result, that helps them because they don't have to work so hard to find other small businesses who might not be able to, they don't really know whether they're actually capable. So this brings fully capable, fully prepared, fully vetted companies to the market. But it still doesn't mean that you win. So you got to go out and you got to do what's necessary to be able to build that business. So the question of how this impacts you and what you can do about it right this minute, you can go to the next piece, is part of this is preparing for your pitch to GSA as to why you are qualified. So we don't mind sharing this kind of information. A lot of stuff. I mean, I love the stuff that Pat knows, and just the checkbox right there. That's just that one form. And Pat's got a whole slew of those things that he brings to the table. So what we will do in context with your company is to take a look, kind of assembling this panel to say, hey, how can I be one of these 40? How can I be that? And the answer is we can do this in private panel sessions where when we have several of these that we're operating already, and you can bring up to 10 people on your staff where we go through and we talk about where you are and helping you come to a place to be able to respond to that RFP. And you can get direct access to the expertise that we have here. We'll walk you through the eligibility, and this goes, Pat said it, and he can't stress it enough, but I'm going to tell you, the format alone is probably the most important thing in making sure that you stay in format and that when you answer the question, it's in the right box. I know that sounds mundane, but it's those types of things that can get you booted if you're not paying attention. And it goes to your response, the strategy around that response, dealing with potential marketing issues and other ways that you can get your message out to those folks. I am going to be the contact for that. You can get me at dlow@isifederal.com to schedule a private session. The objective really is so that we can get to a place where you're able to answer the question. If you have any questions, we're going to be submitting things for RFI. We're actually talking about that with our panel groups to say, hey, you might not want to answer that question, or here's a question that you really want to know, and make sure that it gets out there for that. So you can reach out to me for this particular piece. Hit me in the next slide there, Carl. And the next piece is that we're offering packages to do the whole entire assembly for your RFP response. And it's a fixed price. We can talk about that. And if you're interested in this type of thing, if you need this kind of help, the objective is to provide you with a full, ready-to-go solution that walks through your company step by step by step, fills in the pieces, makes those compelling. And one of the things that's really important is, and we all have problems with our elevator pitch. I know I do sometimes, even in sales, and that is getting that concise message in such a restricted space. And this is like a ton of little elevator pitches that you have to be persuasive with your response to in a very short period of time. And some of it's just nuts and bolts. But the other is, how can I be the most persuasive within this little box, in an Excel spreadsheet, so that the folks on the other side get it, that I know what I'm doing. So being able to do that. One thing that we'll do, and Carl mentioned this earlier, we're already working on RFP responses right now. as if it's going to be a submission. Because by understanding and responding specifically for individual companies to say, well, here's our strength, here's our weakness, why don't we ask this question? Why don't we see if we can expand this? They may not do it, but man, it'd be a shame if we didn't ask the question and they would have been willing to. So these are the types of things, if you're responding to that right now, we can help you start that process and start responding to that RFP and actually create a draft RFP response that you can kind of get an idea of how that would be graded. Very valuable. And this will help you avoid the mistakes and really get to that place where you can maximize your score. The other place that we can help you with is doing a sales plan, just your whole entire federal strategy. This is my world, and developing that process. And if you need help with anything, dealing with business development, whether it's getting your key targets, understanding the marketplace, figuring out which agencies would be best to penetrate, which agencies you already have relationships with, and which agencies can you expand your experience in. These are all pieces that will flow into your OASIS strategy as well as your broader federal strategy, because guess what? Not everybody's going to buy from OASIS. So we want to make sure that we hit all those pieces as a federal strategy, not just banking on one particular contract vehicle or one particular agency. We like to look at the total market. And then finally, this is really going to be cool, and that is that after OASIS is won, you're going to have task orders that are going to be coming out, and they're going to have to be responded to quickly. This is going to have a definite impact on your business processes. And our objective is to take away any of the stresses dealing with that and working with your team to a place where we can actually do that response for you and submit it in a timely fashion, to be able to bridge the gap and fill those gaps that you have in your facility, in your own structures, because a lot of these folks are small businesses, and guess what? If you're $14 million, less than $14 million, and you're doing all the work that's associated with this, and you stayed under that $14 million threshold, chances are you got a pretty stressed organization, and you're pretty lean and mean already, and you don't have people sitting around just waiting. So the objective, again, is to be able to fill those gaps with support. Okay, hit with the next one. And that's directly related to OASIS. We're not doing it for anything else. We're waiting for OASIS to come and be there. So, Carl, I'm gonna let you dive into this a little bit as far as the summary of action items, and you can take this away. And I'm going to be gathering the questions because there's a bunch of them here, and I want to make sure we get them all answered.
Okay, so you've got homework. If you're going to respond to OASIS, there are some things that you need to do. You need to respond to the RFI by the 29th if you're going to. So you got a deadline there. There's also the site visit that's coming up on the 13th, and you need to schedule a one-on-one session. I would not let that opportunity pass by if you're planning to bid OASIS. One of the things that really struck me about OASIS is how, if you're planning to prime it, and if you're planning to skip it and be a sub later, you still have to do some of the very same things. All right, but if you're planning to prime it, you've got to collect your documentation. You might as well go ahead and prepare a draft proposal, okay, so that you're in position and ready for a quick response when the final RFP comes out. Right? But you need to start and implement your sales planning. If you wait until you get an OASIS award to start looking for opportunities, it'll be a year after you've got it before you're actually seeing any business from it. So if you want to make money from OASIS as a vehicle, you need to start your sales planning now to establish the relationships that will result in the opportunity, so that when you get an OASIS award, you're ready immediately to start putting it to work. Now, if you decide not to bid OASIS, you can still position as a subcontractor after the award. But if you're going to do that, then you also need to start your sales planning now. Okay? You need to explore the customer relationships as well as explore potential prime relationships, so that you can bring those relationships and opportunities the prime contractor in order to get them to accept you as a subcontractor. So
And
if you look,
yeah,
so
real
if you
quick,
look at,
this is one of the questions that's here, and that came from Kingsley. And what value can a sub bring to a potential prime? What's the best possible way that you can bring value to a potential prime? Which is what Carl said.
yeah, in fact, that's critical on OASIS because the prime doesn't have to fill gaps. Okay, the prime is in, they're solid. Okay, so what they're looking for from a sub is business. They want the subs that are going to bring them opportunities. So, you know, bring the relationship, bring the leads, okay, and if you don't have those, then you're just one of the hundreds of subcontractors that are going to be calling, begging for a slot. But if you want to get ahead of all of them and be first in line, have the relationships and the opportunities, and have something and be able to put that on the table as something to discuss, then you'll get the prime's attention. Last thing on our summary of action items that you need to do is decide whether you want our help. If you're not sure whether you want to go ahead with OASIS, then that private session that Dave just told you about, while it costs a little bit of money, it may actually be just what you need to avoid going down the wrong path on OASIS. And if you go down the right path, it may be just what you need so that it's a profitable path. But either way, you know, whether you go it alone or not, you know, that's something else on your to-do list. How those questions look? Dave, you ready to?
They look good. All right, real quick, couple of them here. That will the presentation file be available after the call? The answer is yes. We will make available the presentation as well as the whole entire thing, including my audio drop-off apparently, and my disconnection. Will be there on YouTube. We'll post that on YouTube so that you can disseminate that as you like. Here's a great one. This comes from Michael, and he says, what are the top 5 things you think will eliminate competitors in the small business category? Top 5 things. Anybody bold enough to step up for that one?
Yeah.
Number 1 is past performance.
Not the way they want it.
What's that?
Going off the format, missing something, not or entering information that you think is right, and then when you check later it isn't right. NAICS codes not in SAM, just a ton of stuff can get you tossed. I don't know if there's top 5, but that's some of them. Dave and Carl, you might have more.
Well, if you're talking about winning it, I would put past performance surprises on that list. Right.
Right.
You don't, you know, if you know, you may think that the customer likes you, but you know, if you know if it's not in your CPARs, okay, that's how they'll be doing the past performance evaluations here. All right. If it's not in CPARs that way, then you know you won't get all the points. Another one is you might be the best company in the world at what you do, but you need to be the best company in at least 4 of those disciplines. All right.
If you want to really be at the top of that list.
Yeah, if you're specialized,
I think
it's going to be rough.
I think that the requirements for ISO certification, CMMI, and the financial accounting program, along with the purchasing process, those are 4 areas that almost all small businesses don't have. Certainly not altogether. Very few, very, very few, in fact, have those 4 pieces together. So if that's the first place that I would say the top one is at least for me, is having all 4 of those together. But the rest of these, because it's a matrix-oriented type of a thing, that Pat said, there's so many different little check boxes here that if you don't fill it out right, if you respond inappropriate, whatever, there's all kind of little things that get you tossed to the place where you don't even get to play. You don't even get to play potentially. You don't even get the chance to get scored because you goofed. It's like being late on a proposal. We've all done it. We've all been late, or we misjudged. We thought it was 1 o'clock Pacific time. It was 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. I mean, we've all done things like that where we've messed up, and it's those things that the gotchas that I think will be most of the small businesses' biggest concerns. Hopefully that helped. Here's one here. It says the draft is inconsistent with the current political environment. Socioeconomic status and price currently trump all other factors in proposal evaluation. I got one answer to that in a minute. Do you anticipate significant political resistance to such an IDIQ award? And I'm going to take this first. First, relationships trump socioeconomic checkboxes. That's the first thing I'm going to say. Secondly, is that GSA has been doing this for a long time. This has been continually vetted. Will they get some pushback? Yes, potentially they will, and maybe those are some of the things that may get baked into this as part of the response in the future. Any other comments on the socioeconomic and political environment, how it will affect this?
They're covered. They're safe. They have nothing to worry about. The reason is the unrestricted procurement is 50% small business set aside, and they have a small business procurement, and the categories and thresholds on the small business procurement are driven by the NAICS codes, not by GSA. So, yep. and I'm sure that OASIS was vetted through OMB, well before the draft hit the street. So it's
way too big for it not to have had significant insight and transparency into it. I agree with you, Carl. I think that's
so I'm not saying that everybody's going to like it, but I bet you that nothing's going to change.
And Peter actually asked a question here. Will the OASIS Prime contracts have small business subcontracting goals? And you just answered it. And that in the full and open side, it's 50%. 50% are the goals, Peter. So that's a great question. What is your opinion of a small business teaming with a large to go after OASIS? We have a strong track record in many functional areas, but not all. Is it worth to get double scoring points to bring them on your team? Carl?
You can't do it. You can't bid as a team. So you won't increase the score that you will get will be based on your company. You can't even create a joint venture to go after this. The only way you can do this as a joint venture is if it's an existing one from some previous pursuit. So it's, in terms of being a prime contractor on OASIS, it is exclusively done on your own qualifications. Now, after award, where the large businesses have to do 50% of their business with small businesses, then maybe you can get on a team, but that's where everybody in the world is going to be knocking on their door, and the only way that they're going to pay attention to you is if you're bringing business and not asking for business.
Right. Here's one for, I think, Pat, now this may be for you. How is this new contract different from Mobis? What's the difference between OASIS and Mobis, and will Mobis be going away?
Okay, first, Mobis is going nowhere. I've had continuing communications with Yvonne and Randy and the people up there. I've worked with them for years, and they're defending this and fighting this because they know that if strategic sourcing starts getting into the knickers of professional services, that they might very well lose their jobs. I mean, one thing, and I'm going to digress for 60 seconds here, one thing about strategic sourcing, it's dawning on the GSA contract specialists that this is a threat to their professions, that if SSI actually is implemented, they won't need 95% of who's sitting in those chairs. So they're real aware of this, and they're defending their turf. The IT people said, we are not going to go to this demand-based model, forget it. Mobus is saying the same thing, forget it. So Mobus is going nowhere. OASIS is not a threat to Mobus because OASIS is ancillary to, in addition to Mobus. It's Mobus plus financial, Mobus plus engineering, Mobus plus one of the other disciplines in the six that you saw there. So it's not going to hurt Mobus. In fact, I think it's going to help people in the long run because Mobus is going to stay locked into program management, training, facilitation, and surveys and acquisition management. So this is ancillary to, this is in addition to, this solves a problem that Mobus has had for a long time. So the people up in Auburn are welcoming it, and they're not going anywhere.
Okay, here's where Pat and I may diverge just a little bit. I get skeptical. I get skeptical when I see the size of this particular contract vehicle and the potential of the future. And I can see where Thomas is coming from, where he's asking, as I know he's asking this for a reason, and I would say that the number one best way to eliminate that as a threat is to have the relationship with the customer. The number one way. No matter what happens, whatever vehicle it is. If they like you, they'll figure out a way to buy from you. They may, you may have to team up with an 8A partner or service disabled or whatever it happens to be. You may have to do that in order to be able to participate in something or to meet some of the goals. I think that, there's been questions about how this affects what's happening with their Schedule 70s and things like that. It is a question. I think you're right, Pat, in the short term, which short term is 5 to 10 years. That is, but we can see this morph. I can see it morphing, and we've debated about that too. So it just shows you that just because we're good friends, we don't always agree on everything. But I really think I think that I can see why Tom is potentially worried. Here's another one. How will the past performance of a CTA be evaluated as that of the CTA or that of the companies that form the CTA? Who wants to take that?
Probably, I'm going to guess the companies individually will say, here's my past performance, each one. That would be my guess.
Okay.
So company A, here's my past performance, customer sat. Company B, here's my past performance, customer sat. Initially, that's how I see that playing out.
Okay, can we bid as a small if we're technically over the NAICS revenue limits but are still listed as a small business on our IT 70 schedule through 2018?
It all goes back to SAM. Where are you? Update your SAM, put in all the current NAICS codes, restart your computer, go back to SAM. If it says you're small for that NAICS code, you're small for that NAICS code.
And remember that your revenues, and this is at the edge of my ability because folks, I go out and I kill things. These guys figure out how to make it fit into a particular project or a particular schedule. But don't the revenues, they're three years trailing numbers, right? And so they're updated. It's the past 3 years. It's an average, right? Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So the chance if you're topping out, and there's something in here, and I don't know exactly what it is yet, about how that affects your ability within Schedule 70, but I think, if you're, I'm not, we'd have to talk about that and figure that out. That's more of an individual thing, I think. So the next question is, what do you think of the labor rate range? And these are lower than my current MOBIS rates. I want to bid, but keep my rates the same. Any suggestions? I think that's an off-liner. That'd be something we have to check out individually in the company, right? Yeah.
Right.
We'd have to be engaged to be able to figure that thing out, Thomas. Sorry, I can't answer that right out of the gate. Some of the other questions, again, yes, we will be making this available in both PowerPoint and the audio-video version on YouTube. And there's a question of how can we get additional services, which I think we're probably at that place where we need to be wrapping up anyway. So if we go there, we can. You go to the next slide. I think. Oh, that's me. Single point of contact for the panel is me. You can reach out to me at dlo@isifederal.com or give me a phone. You can shoot me a phone. You can call me by phone. And we have several different components that we can do for you. If you need a complete an entire package, we can do that. If you need us to fill some of the gaps, we have, especially right now with the RFI and determining whether it really makes sense for your company and looking at the pieces that you really have to pay attention to for your particular environment and in your pool. We can do that. That's easy. That's a $1,000 piece where we get this whole panel together just for you. We schedule that in the next week, and we're knocking those out and scheduling those now. So just reach out to me and let me know that you're interested in that, and we can do that. And that's probably the best that you can that you can do right now. And we're assembling also questions and answers, or questions to submit and comments for the RFI as well as part of that process. We're helping with those pieces. So let's see. You have any other comments about any of those pieces, Carl, about the Schedule 70 or MOBIS or any of the other pieces that were out there?
I think the Schedule 70 thing, it's going to come down to your 3-year average and whether or not you're listed on some other vehicle or some other schedule won't matter so much. And as far as MOBIS goes, my take on that was, ask me in 10 years. That's when OASIS comes up for recompete, and that's when it'll either take over the world or disappear.
Yep. And there is a question about will OASIS be revisited periodically? Will the chance to become one of the 40? Will you have another chance? Did we address that already? I can't remember. We talked to some of the folks about that.
They will be, except there will be another opportunity to get on, but we're not sure when that is, or if we believe what GSA says about it, because they've pretty much been late with everything that has to do with OASIS so far. So they haven't even got the final RFP out, and they've missed every deadline that they've set. So yes, there'll probably be an opportunity, but it'll probably be years from now, if not years from whenever they say it's going to be.
Yeah, and I look at it as FAA, EFAST, they did it. I mean, there's a lot of different things that are competing for this type of space. There's a lot of contract vehicles that are available, including, it's SB, which is under the chess system. We went into that a little bit earlier, NASA SOUP. They're trying to solve these problems, and GSA is getting out there to make that happen as best they can to be able to continue to be relevant, in fact, in this marketplace. And Pat brought something up about, peanut butter and jelly last night. We were talking about this, and that, you can buy peanut butter on one side and buy jelly on the other side, but there isn't a way to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich because they're separate vehicles, they're separate ways. So this is a way to be able to kind of combine those. And it's really interesting to see how they're doing it. It's and it will be very interesting to see how what the outcomes are and the positioning. But again, the small business one. There's another question about small business participation with the primes. 50% is supposed to be small business, right? And small business categories fall within those two. So even if you don't win, positioning yourself with the primes, and the best way to do that is having some business to be able to take to them. There's a few more questions here. Some of those are more directed to individual pieces, so we'll have to take those offline. And we're coming up on an hour and a half, so we really appreciate your participation in this and staying with us for this. Give us a call if you would like to, if you want to have the NAICS code cheat sheet that we talked about before, and kind of looking at what these markets look like, and some of the things that we kind of dive into in an individual basis. This is like a broader view, but it'll give you an idea of why this is happening. $90 billion annually is being through these few NAICS codes that are there, so you can imagine why. You can see why that's happening. Websites for to reach us on, you have isiFederal.com, GSAproposal.com. There's a slew of free stuff there. If you haven't been there, go there, see what it's all about. And captureplanning.com, Prop Library, same thing. Carl puts so much great stuff out there for folks so that they can really understand pieces of their internal process, and most of the time it reveals gaps in the flow of those things. So we'd love to help you. That's why we have such a great team when we work on things together like this, is because we have the business development components, we have the proposal development components, and the writing piece in the capture management side. So we really appreciate you joining us. Any last comments there for you, Carl or Pat?
Nope, just thanks for attending.
Thank you, everybody.
Awesome, great. Well, we appreciate it, and we'll get the updates out to everybody. If there's any lagging questions, just email them to me at dlow@isifederal.com. And everybody, I see a whole bunch of excellent thanks, good answers. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Very good. We appreciate the feedback on that. If you like what we do, we always like to know that we're at least getting close. And you're welcome, Evangeline and Gene. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll look forward to hopefully seeing you all again.
Thanks a lot, everybody.